I don't you read the back yesterday about she. I can't remember the number now. Meditate that probably further and other. And always miss out and they're all pointing around. I think it's oh yeah.
We're getting that.
When you first wake up,
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to make a start if you're sorted out. I'd like to welcome everybody to this meeting of the East Lindsey Planning Committee. Confirm the meeting's being live streamed, I think, which I believe it is. Can you make certain all your phones are switched off, please? There's no fire drill planned. Members of staff will guide you out should anything occur. Speak up, those who are speaking to your microphone for the benefit of this live streaming visit. Only those members of the public who are speakers, designated speakers, may take part. No one else may contribute from the gallery. I'm delighted to see so many of you here today. You're very welcome, but some of you might enjoy it and others less so. But anyway, it's nice to see you all on parade. Thank you for turning out. Any member who declares an interest and wants to leave, wants to go across the road so they can watch it on the television. And yep, that's about it, I think. Right, we'll move on to the oh no, we've got a few more things here, haven't we? Yeah. Any disclosure? Apologies for absence, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies received from Councillor Steve McMillan, and we have Councillor Robert Watson substituting.
Yeah, welcome to Councillor Watson. I also ought to welcome James Felton, who is our legal advisor, but due to personal circumstances can't be here today. He is on the end of the computer, so you'll have to allow us a bit of latitude should he need to enter the discussion. I'd like to welcome Phil Norman, who's he's got a big long title there in front of him, which I can't understand, but anyway, nice to see him. And I'd like to particularly welcome Stephanie Watson, who is a member of our planning committee staff. She's sitting over there. She's our future. She's training to be a planning officer, and we hope before too long to get her bridled up and into action. So we're delighted to see her here. As I say, she and her colleagues are the future. Right, any declarations of interest, please? Councillor Taylor.
Yes, Chair. I'm the ward member for the application at item 5, and I will offer no opinion.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, again, I'm ward member for item 7. I wish to speak with your permission.
Thank you. Drainage boards, we've got all those, have we? Yeah. en bloc. Any other declarations? Are you happy with the minutes of the previous meeting? Those who've had a chance to look at them? Everyone happy? Stick your hands up so I can sign them. Thank you. The update from the planning policy. Councillor Aldrich, I think it's you.
Yes, that's very kind of you to acknowledge me, Mr. Chairman. Most people don't. But yeah, unfortunately, I've got nothing to report
Oh dear, that's a
because the
blow.
last two meetings
Mm.
have been cancelled, and I am sure that in the future we will be very busy because there may be a change in the plan that we've got.
Yeah.
So it's very, very nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for your report. Right, move on to the planning applications. Item 5 on your agenda. We'll begin with the officer's presentation, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 5 is an application, it's an outline application for the erection of 7 custom-built, self-built dwellings, land opposite Christmas Cottage and Thornley and Willows cul-de-sac in Stickford. There's no update to the officer's report. There's nothing to refer to on the supplementary. So straight into this fairly brief presentation. The aerial photo, if I'm cursor working, the site is an open countryside sort of location in character. It sits here, east side of the cul-de-sac. You see that by reference to the red line. So residential properties to the north, then a bit of a gap, and then some residential property to the south, and a sporadic form of development on the opposite side. The indicative layout plan that's provided showing the 7 plots, all aligned in sort of similar fashion, front into the road, individual access points off the cul-de-sac. Then straight onto the photos, really. It is an open site. So it's that, obviously that land on the left-hand side of the access road there. The cursor's not working properly. So boundary at this northern end up here. And again, not a lot to see really, just an open site. And looking to the south. So I think the end of the site is about here, then the space, and then the Caveman property then continues further down to the south there. And again, just to set the context, opposite side of the road and at the north end of the site. So that's where we'd argue sort of the edge of the village proper. And that's it.
Jolly good. We've 2 speakers with regard to this application. Mr. Paul Wilkinson, who's the applicant, who I'd invite to go first, and you've got 3 minutes. And I'm afraid I shall have to shout at you if you overrun. You need a microphone in front of you, else they won't hear it on the. Can you swap? Move chairs, or no? Oh well. Well, if you come this way, come to this chair next to you. Yeah, and then you've got a microphone in front of you. Just press the bar, and it should go green. And then we're ready when you are.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Our application consists of 7 self-built properties in the village of Stickford, offering massive benefits to local people. We've dedicated these plots to be marketed solely to local people, with 2 plots set out for first-time buyers with large discounts and 2 for the over 55s. The potential problems with this site is the flooding. The main consultee is the EA, and they have no objections whatsoever concerning the site if the build heights are achieved resulting from the topo surveys. The surface water, we've had site meetings with the highways and the IDB and my flood consultants, and we're all agreeable that the scheme which we have proposed to use in this application is successful. We will actually be to the betterment of the whole area overall. We aim to catch the surface water from the 2 field ditches and the surface water from the field in a much larger attenuation ditch running to the rear of the whole site, which will be 4 to 5 times larger than the current one. That's to the front of the plots to release the water slowly to the riparian ditch. We will also offer free of charge to regrade so the water runs away freely. Without using all of my 3 minutes up on this one subject, this could simply be set out in conditions for us to prove that the scheme works before anything is built on shore. Highways are also happy with slight road widening along the plots again, which we agreed to do to allow two-way traffic, again, which also benefits local residents. This is not a major development. This is for 7 family homes, hopefully to help 7 local families stay close to their current family and friends to build their dreams home within the keeping and the style of the village. The only reason my planning consultants and myself can see this application being recommended for refusal is apparently there is enough self-build plots available in the area. My estate agents and myself have searched and we can only find 6 in total within 10 miles and none with any discounts for first-time buyers. Over the years, I have built and delivered some wonderful schemes that I'm proud of and hopefully the council are too. I'm getting long in the tooth now and this scheme isn't going to change my life, but hopefully it will change 7 local families' lives. Building your own house is something that a lot of people hope to do but never have the opportunities to do, especially in their own village. It has already been proven to me that the scheme will work, as I've had 4 people contact me about the plots if the application is successful already, 2 of which are first-time buyers. I'm also sure everybody is aware of what the new government's plans are for building, which is to encourage people to build. So I hope you've taken all these benefits into consideration and many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. If you could switch your microphone off just a minute. I'd like to welcome our second speaker, which is Councillor Pam Bryant. If you could switch, you've got 3 minutes also. Off you go. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Pamela Bryant. I'm a parish councillor for Stickford. Stickford Parish Council would like to make a formal request for refusal on the outline planning requested by Wilkinson Properties Boston Limited in the cul-de-sac for the following reasons. Stickford is registered as a small unsustained village. Its only amenities are a public house, church and a car sales garage. Stickney appears to be overwhelmed with houses for sale and has granted planning permission for more to be built. Stickford Parish Council has not seen any evidence that there is a need for more properties to be built in the cul-de-sac. There is evidence on the planning portal that 78 objections have been received. That in itself is evidence from the residents in the cul-de-sac that planning should not be granted. There is a brownfield site situated on the west side of the village, which could be developed, therefore saving good agricultural land for food production. Flooding, which does appear to be more frequent as heavy rain always fills the dikes on the higher ground from the A16 in the west, flowing towards the cul-de-sac in the east. 2 events in November 2023 and February 24 caused large flooding in the proposed self-built custom dwellings area in the cul-de-sac area, with water laying on the land, then filtering to other areas. This caused excess water in the sewage system, many people without sewage facilities for days. If the East Venkach water had burst its banks on the west side, most of the area of the cul-de-sac and surrounding areas would have been underwater, including the proposed self-built stroke custom dwellings. The maps produced by the Environment Agency have indicated areas which could be subject to flooding, and the cul-de-sac is one of them. The cul-de-sac is a lane due to its narrow width. 2 cars cannot pass each other. The verges have insufficient width to allow widening the lane or creating lay-bys. Extra traffic with construction of the self-built stroke custom dwellings would block the lane and make it impossible for vehicles to pass safely. The proposed area for the self-built stroke custom dwellings is not an infill area. It's important to retain the character and rural aspect of the view from the cul-de-sac towards the A16. The residents who live in this area of the cul-de-sac also enjoy the presence of the wildlife who also use the area for their various trackways.
Thank you very much. If you wouldn't mind switching your microphone off, then I'll invite questions of our speakers from the members of the committee? Has anybody a question to ask either speaker, please? Councillor McNally.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a question for the applicant. In terms of the over 55 provisions, what sort of assessment, how have you come to the assessment that that's needed?
My planning consultant did that, and we basically said that is a mass advantage of people wanting to do that, and so that's why it was set out. Two first-time buyers, builders, and 2 houses set out for the over 55s to build their own house.
Okay, any further questions? Nobody, any questions? Oh, okay. Many thanks to both our speakers. Would anybody like to ask a question of the officer, please? Councillor Cunnington, sorry, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, looking at this application, there's been speculation that the future government may do different, but at the minute we've got to go on what's in front of us and what rules and regulations we've got. So I can do no more because it's obviously greenfield land, it's open countryside, but I'm quite happy to support the officer and refuse it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or proposals, Councillor Hall? David?
I'm happy to second Councillor Cunnington's proposal.
Thank you. Any other comments, observations, questions or proposals? Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask for some clarification about what the officer's view is on the number of self-build plots available within the district, please?
Is that consideration, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think the report sets it out. If I could sort of draw attention, I think it's at 7.45 onwards. There's a section in the report that sort of tries to outline the circumstances for considering self-build, the council's policy position, and how it then reaches a conclusion that basically there is some weight that can be given to helping to deliver on self-build, but it's not substantive enough, and certainly not substantive in this case, mindful of the other constraints and the other difficulties for this particular site.
Very good. Any questions, further questions? If not, I'll go on, Councillor McNally.
Thank you, Chairman. Just I've sort of seen this somewhere before. In terms of the over 55s housing and the affordable housing, if that was proper, I don't know how that's been demonstrated, the test sort of thing. If that was demonstrated to a fairly good standard, would this be a different decision?
I think, Chairman, just going to check. I think it's we do have a policy that relates to acknowledges that there's a need for accommodation for the elderly in the district. It's intended, I think, to deal with a more bespoke type of need, and certainly, again, at the situation in this case, there isn't the evidence to show a need locally to deliver that type of provision. So, as an exception to the normal policy position, we don't have enough weight to go with it. So. Certainly, in the absence of any evidence, there's nowhere to go with it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and just in terms of the affordable, I presume there's no evidence to suggest that from, has there been any discussions with the housing providers to sort of say that there is a need, or is that just been an assumption?
Not that I'm aware of. In terms of our policy position, and as you appreciate, for developments that are larger than that, then as a matter of policy, we would look to secure affordable housing. But as an exception site, i.e. delivering affordable housing on the back of an identified local need, I'm not aware that there's been any discussions there.
Anybody else? If not, it's proposed and seconded for refusal. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous, I think. Yeah. Thank you all. That item is refused. Have a look at the planning laws as they come out in the future, and you might have another bat. Thank you. I'd like to have a swap with our speakers, if we may. If you wouldn't mind withdrawing, I mean, you're welcome to stay if you'd like to. Perhaps there's only a limit to what you can stand. I don't know. But anyway, thank you. Could I, while we're changing the guard, could I ask you to look at the supplementary agenda, please? Because there's a lot on here and I don't want to hold the meeting up whilst you read it. Oh, yeah. We appear to have two speakers. Or are you, yeah.
Is that loud?
No, I don't think so. I think anything that, any questions I'll have to ask Naomi or whatever, and it'd be better if you didn't, I think, as you're not a designated speaker, but you won't be far away, will you, sir? I think, as I say, we currently have one speaker, which is Naomi Wright, who's the architect. So I'd like to welcome her. We'll just give you a minute before we start. And if you can get this supplementary thing digested, please.
Is that easier?
Right, we'll make a
Give me a second.
oh, sorry, hang on. We're in slight turmoil today. Oh, Mr. Beale that needs twin egg thought.
It's not turmoil. We're not in turmoil territory yet, are we? Just a glitch.
Glitch, that's the word. Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, you should be right now.
Interesting. Yeah, exactly. We send it into disco.
Good morning, sorry about that. Right, yeah, so Chairman's already drawn your attention to supplementary agenda. Just to explain, it's just slight amendments to the wording of the conditions. So rather than being pre-commencement, for these particular conditions, the applicant can actually start work in terms of demolition and things and then address these conditions. And condition 7 to do with contamination, it's just to be more specific about what's required, because they have generally addressed the conditions, just a couple of little things that need addressing, and this is just makes it clearer really for the applicant. So go on to the presentation. So the application site is this open area here amongst the woodlands. You can see Kirkby Lane running along the northern boundary of the site and the 2 existing poultry units that are already on the site. Access is roughly in this location here. This just shows the site in its context. So the site is here, where the cursor is. You can see all the woodland around it. And then up here is Woodall Spa. And the main village of Kirkby on Bain is just off the slide down here to the right. Site location plan. Site outlined in red. You can see the existing poultry units are still on the site. And that's just in more detail. You can see the site bordered by a lot of trees and also within the site, access in this corner up here. So proposed layout. So Kirkby-on-Bain runs along here. So again, accessing this corner here, you've got the proposed carport just next to the entrance. The dwelling is in this area here. And then you've got your 3 lodges near the pond. And then one of the poultry units, part of it is to be demolished and then the rest of it to be continued to use as a workshop. This area here is for wildflowers and new trees that the applicant's already planted. And this just shows it in more detail. So again, dwelling in this part of the site here, which is an existing clearing, new pond, and the lodges, walkways. The idea is that the cars would remain near the entrance and the carport just here. So moving on to the elevations of the proposed dwelling. This is the northern elevation. And the eastern, the southern elevation, and the western elevation. Just a cross section through. The orange bits on the ground floor, you can see that's to represent the rammed earth core that runs centrally through the dwelling. So first, ground floor plan. So it's ground floor, the ideas are the bedrooms will be ground floor. And again, this orange wall running through the centre is the rammed earth wall. And you can see by the width of the walls, this represents the miscanthus bales, because obviously the walls would be thicker than your average brick built dwelling. And the first floor plan, again, the orange bit in the centre, you can see is the rammed earth core running all the way through the dwelling. And just the roof plan. So this is one of the designs for the lodges. And the floor plan of the lodge. You can see all the circles denote the accessibility side of things and the ramp around the edge. And this is the other lodge. And again, the floor plan. This is the plans for the proposed carport that's at the entrance to the site. You can see all the solar panels, open frontage and storage at the rear. See the floor plan there. And this is just showing the existing poultry unit with the part that's to be demolished. And with the rest to continue to be used as a workshop. So photos. This is the entrance into the site. You can see one of the poultry units. You see reference in the report to the former RAF sewage building. That's this building here, just on the right. So this is just looking to the left of the entrance. You can just see what the boundary is like. This was clearly taken in winter, so there are some glimpse views into the site, but the boundary is quite heavily treed. So moving into the site, so this is the largest of the existing poultry units, and the proposed dwelling is to go just in this area here. So looking across the site towards the woodlands at the south of the site. And this is the poultry unit where part of it will still be used as a workshop. So roughly in front of you here is where the lodges would be. So the northern part of the site, you can just, this was taken a few months ago now, so it's grown up a bit since then. But you can see a lot of the trees that the applicant's already planted. This is the woodland adjoining the site, and Kirkby Lane just runs just off left of the photo. Looking northwards across the sites, again, woodlands on the right. Again, you can see the trees that the applicant's already planted. And just on the left there is the existing poultry unit. So this is stood roughly in the rough position where the proposed dwelling would go, looking northwards. So again, this poultry unit would go, and this is where the lodges would be. So it's a little bit dark, but this is the opening where the proposed dwelling would be. Agricultural fields off in the distance. This is taken recently in the summer, just so you can see what Kirkby Lane is like. So site is on the right, so quite heavily screened in the summer months. And then this is looking in the other direction, which would be off towards Woodall Spa. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a fine presentation. We have one speaker, Ms. Naomi Wright, who's the architect. Delighted to welcome you. And you have 3 minutes to state your case, please. So when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, councillors and members of the public. My name is Naomi Wright and I'm the architect at Studio Bark, and I've been working on the design of this project from an early stage, and would like to just share an opportunity to explain the incredible benefits of this scheme as a whole. At Studio Bark, we work on many NPPF paragraph 84 homes, which is the exceptional homes clause, and we create exemplary net zero homes that allow others to see that it is actually possible to build without negatively impacting the planet. This is what we've done with Burford House and the 3 accessible lodges. So the policy of paragraph 84E of the NPPF relates to building new homes, new isolated homes in the open countryside, and it requires that, and I will paraphrase this, the design is of exceptional quality, is truly outstanding, reflects higher standards of architecture, raises standards of design, and enhances its immediate setting. So I'll briefly touch on these points and how we believe the design as a whole achieves this. So first, is it truly outstanding? Does it reflect a high standard of architecture? The home and the lodges are made from natural, local materials which meet an incredibly high standard of architecture without the need for elaborate, expensive design. For example, as Jane mentioned, it's comprised of locally sourced miscanthus bales and other natural materials. The proposal locks in carbon, it achieves incredible U values, high levels of airtightness, and is a very low carbon way of building. Secondly, does it help raise the standards of design more generally in rural areas, and is it sensitive to the local area? The lodges are designed so that people with accessible needs feel like they actually belong in these spaces. We haven't just designed to the minimum of building reg standards, and raising standards should also mean lowering carbon. The whole scheme shows that it can be more than 5 times lower carbon than most of the current industry standards. Unlike some cynical developers, we aren't building what's most profitable and then offsetting it later with trees. Finally, does it significantly enhance its immediate setting? The existing site is in quite poor condition and others may say has become a local eyesore. The proposal proves that it will enrich the surroundings with its ecological enhancements, improved biodiversity, dramatically improved water attenuation, and the encouragement of tourists to the area. So I just reach out to members today to help support this forward-thinking scheme so that we can start working towards a whole life zero carbon future. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Right, has any member a question for our speaker, please? Councillor Cunnington.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, you've just raised concerns with me about the whole development of this site. You say it's exceptional quality, outstanding, and you're looking to, I can't think of the phrase you actually use now, but basically meet the needs of accessibility. Now, we've seen from the plans that the car parking is at the front, away from the properties. You're talking accessibility. How do you then expect people with limited mobility to get access to these dwellings when the cars are nowhere near? it does raise real concerns that accessibility would mean you can get as close as you can. And that isn't. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. On the site, you can see the carport, which I think you're referring to in the north of the site. There is actually also 2 cars parked nearer the accessible lodges. And there is a level track that runs to all of them with a ramp that isn't just to building reg standards, it is for the comfort of people with accessible needs. Hopefully this answers your question.
Happy? They're there, I think. Well, Brett, can you see them or not? No. Anyway, they appear to be there. Distance, can you give us a guide, please?
I'm not completely sure, maybe to the first lodge about 15 metres. I think also it's just worth noting that these aren't exclusively accessible lodges. They're lodges for people to come and enjoy the site, and they are also accessible as well. Thank you.
Without further question, anybody? Thank you. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you. In terms of raising standards of design, could you maybe say a few words around whether what we've got here is unique at a national level or whether it's stuff that's been done many times before? And then if you could just say a few words about the mud wall running through the middle, how that's adding value or is unique. Thank you.
Of course. I think in terms of design, paragraph 84 can be disputed. Raising standards of design doesn't always mean that it looks something that's alien to the landscape. So we took this as raising standards of design in terms of sustainability. How can we really make an impact with this project that doesn't necessarily create a new building typology for Woodhall Spa? So that was the avenue that we went down in terms of design. In terms of the rammed earth wall, we were looking at measures to really make this project settle into the landscape. And so the rammed earth wall would be used from earth on the site. And the concept is that it's south facing. So when the sun orientates around the house, it's hitting that rammed earth wall in the day and then releasing heat. So it's acting as a thermal store during the day, which it isn't a new technology. It's been done for thousands and thousands of years, but it's something that we're trying to shine a light on and bring back into our construction for low carbon options.
So just to follow up on the point of detail, the mud wall, I thought that looked like it was running through the middle as opposed to exposed, or maybe I misunderstood that. Thank you.
Yes, it would be in the middle of the building internally. I think there are still some issues with using rammed earth externally in terms of waterproofing. So it depends on what the use of the wall is. And for us, it's to make the environment nice to live in for our clients and to limit the amount of energy that's spent on heating if you can use this natural material. So it is internal.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Oh, go on, Councillor Yardley.
Just to quickly ask about the wall again. So basically, the idea is to heat the wall through internal heating. Is that right? So it's not sun-based at all, right?
Yeah. So it is sun-based. So on the elevations, you can see these large windows which have been calculated. Their heights have been calculated due to sun angles, but also so that Ostler's plantation in the east part of the site isn't affecting the amount of sun that's coming through in the winter months specifically.
That's easy to understand, Councillor Yardley again.
I'd just like to say I really, really, really like this design, and it might be inappropriate, but I think once you guys finish, you must invite the planning officers to come and see exactly what it looks like if it was passed.
Jolly good. Thank you. Any further questions of our speaker, please? If not, I'd like to thank her. And have you any questions for the officers? Councillor McNally.
Yeah, just picking up on some of the other comments earlier. When we've had these paragraph 84s before, they've always been consulted with, is it the National Design Council or some specific body? Has any of that conversation taken place?
I think the answer to that, Jane will correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think there was a suggestion that perhaps it could go in the direction of design review, which is, I think, is the process that they often go through. It's basically I suppose a critical appraisal by other architects, by other landscape architects, etc. In this case, it's not formally gone through that process, but I think the submissions addressed a lot of those normally asked questions and issues. But I mean, I don't know if Jane wants to elaborate on that, but that covers it.
Thank you. If you look at paragraph 7.11 of the Ofsted report, that just hopefully give a bit more information about that, and particularly 7.12. As Andy's already said, it's the submission, having looked at a lot of comments that have been made by the design review panel in previous applications, this did already address a lot of that, particularly about how it responds to the landscape. That's a big emphasis for this application. And the application certainly come at it more from the point of view of the technical side of things, you know, the carbon embodiment, or the U values, and it exceeding a lot of, you know, your standard standards. So the applicant has decided not to take it to a design review panel, but we felt in this case enough information had been submitted because the type of application it was, more from the, you know, its sustainability credentials, that we felt we could support it.
Thank you. Councillor Cunnington first, then Councillor McNally.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, when was the poultry sheds last used that's there? Because we've got to be fairly consistent, and in reality, it is open countryside. Poultry sheds obviously feed the land the same as a field. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McNally.
Yeah, I'll cut to the chase. I'll propose it. I will say that this paragraph 84 thing, I mean, this particular one, we're taking on the carbon credentials, aren't we? I have seen architecturally better designs for paragraph 84 that we've failed before, and it just goes to prove how subjective it really is. So actually, you know, what officers in future might think is a not an 84, we might have a different opinion. So I'll just pull out there, but yeah, I'll propose it.
You proposed it for what? Approval, thank you. Okay, excitement. Councillor Marnott.
Hi, I'll second.
Thank you.
Councillor proposal.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah, we've all seen the site. This is certainly a betterment of what we've got. I'm absolutely delighted that we're not going to get glass and concrete. We're going to have a natural material. Everybody seems to think it's got to look alien to be special. So I will support this application.
Councillor Cunnington, have you anything to add?
Yeah, I haven't had the answer to the question of when the poultry shed was last used.
Well, obviously not recently, but I imagine the planning permission is still current. So if they spat the dummy out, they could fill it full of chickens tomorrow. Well, they couldn't because the sheds aren't up to standard, but I would have suggested there was some planning gain involved in this, because those sheds, with the exception of the workshop, will disappear. But that's just a personal observation. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe a bit of clarification, if that's okay, from the officers. In terms of this piece about raising standards of design, is our interpretation that raising standards nationally? And if that's the case, my understanding that there's nothing here that's particularly unique about this. It's all been done before in different ways. So maybe a few words on that, if that's okay. And then a second point, I mean, the design review panel, I'm presuming if it went through that process, it would be judged by a series, you know, a panel of experts who are probably, without disrespecting this group, more aware of what meets this criteria. Am I correct in my understanding of that? Thank you.
Excuse me. Yes, we have a policy in the local plan that's clearly aimed to secure good design outcomes from development proposals, and at the national level, Yes, there are policies in the NPPF, both specific to circumstances like this and isolated sites, but also more generally about raising the bar, raising standard design for all development, really. So there is very much a context about doing that. There is equally in support of that. There is design guidance. That's the national design guidance. That's a material consideration, and that basically lays down, I suppose, the principles about how you might consider or you might approach the consideration of what constitutes good design. So there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of guidance out there. That guidance equally does advocate or encourage the use of design review, but it equally acknowledges that it's not essential to do that. It encourages it because it offers that opportunity for critique or even potential further improvement of schemes, but it doesn't suggest that it's an essential requirement. Sorry, I'm not sure that's entirely answered your question. I've forgotten the last bit.
Yeah, I mean, is it, you know, this raising the standards, is that, you know, does it have to be unique at a national level? And am I right in my understanding that all of this stuff that's proposed here has been done in various ways before, many times over, actually? So does it meet that sort of, and actually, if the panel, you know, if we did go through this panel process, would that be then assessed by experts in what meets these criteria as opposed to us making our own personal opinion on it? Thank you.
I suppose working backwards, ultimately, the design review panel wouldn't be the planning authority. They're not the people who make the decision, so that decision still rests with yourselves, with the planning committee in this case. But nevertheless, you know, it would be an assessment, a review opportunity by people who have that expertise and training. So there is a value in that, and hopefully it's a positive thing, which is why it's encouraged. The policy against which this one's being considered, the paragraph 84 in the NPPF, is the national policy. So it is looking at establishing. It's changed. It's morphed over it's had several iterations, and an earlier iteration very much talked about being innovative. That's not in there in the same way anymore. It's a more generic approach to simply securing exceptional quality design. So it allows, I think, a more fluid or flexible interpretation as to whether or not you believe that that standard has been achieved. So I think the requirement for it to be unique, accessory, is probably gone. It was embodied in that policy position several years ago, but it's not in it in the same way now.
Thank you. Councillor Cunnington.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've come back because on listening to the last councillor, it does raise some, not concerns, but just some thoughts. Obviously, the chicken sheds haven't been used, they're not in use, so that's a good thing. They're effective. Yeah, but what I'm going to say is, at the minute, the weight of us accepting this on the exceptional quality falls on our shoulders, which could cause conflict if we get another one, because it's literally us that chose this. I would like to propose that we have this done by the design review panel, defer it, have it done by that, and then it come back and give officer delegation on a positive response from that to approve the application. At the end of the day, it's not for the weight of that design review panel is actually giving us some weight then to say yes, it is exceptional.
Have we got a seconder for that?
I would like to make a point.
Oh, hang on then. Go on.
Sorry, thank you. But I must say that, I mean, I think that the changes are, you know, admirable with the climate check, what the net zero, etc. But at the end of the day, I do think that this proposal is a betterment, whatever, to, you know, what it is currently. So, and I think that, to me, is the main priority. So it's on that basis that I support Councillor McNally's proposal. Thank you.
Councillor, we're dragging our heels here. I'm not going to take many more observations.
The proposal over here.
Right. Do you know what it is?
I think it's to add, I mean, I don't know if it is to add a condition that it's pending that panel.
It's
which one?
The proposal was to defer the application to go to the review panel and then provide our officers with delegated power that a positive outcome from that panel, this application is approved.
Yeah, okay. All those, now I'm not having any more now. You've had a marvellous bat, enough. Right, all those in favour of Councillor Cunnington's proposal, which has been seconded, could you switch your mic off, please? All those in favour of postponing the job and having as Councillor Cunnington's outlined. Anyone in favour? 2, 3, thank you. All those against? Thank you. We'll deal with the recommendation for approval now. All those in favour of approval, please shout. Those against? Thank you very much. That's approved. Thank you. Thanks to our speaker. Well, it's silly.
Yeah.
Right, we move on to our final application. Yeah. We'll start off with the officer's recommendation. I'd like to point out that Councillor Jones has left the arena. He's sitting as ward member who will speak later. Officer's presentation, please.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the erection of a detached bungalow in the garden of a property called The Paddock on Main Road in New Bolingbroke. Okay, so as you can see on the slide, the aerial shot, the existing dwelling is here. It has an in and an out arrangement onto the B1183, which is Main Road. And there's a dwelling on this southern side, which is a blank elevation along this side. Occupation lane is across the way. And this is the garden area for the host dwelling. Okay, moving to the plans. So the paddock here in the blue line. So that's the existing dwelling. The red line boundary for the bungalow is in here. And as you can see, they would split. So this property would retain this access here. The new property, if allowed, would gain this access here. Oh, what's it doing? Sorry, it jumped a couple. Okay, so it's an application for a 3-bedroomed bungalow set slightly back behind the building line of the existing property, parking at the front. You can see it's got its access there, rear garden at the back. Just typical bungalow, so gable front in the road, sort of rectangular shape. Where's the cursor gone? So bedrooms at this area here, and then the living accommodation at the back. Photographs, this is taken from the site entrance, looking one direction, then the other direction along the main road, and then across Occupation Lane. So this is set further back into the site. As you can see, it's gravelled at the moment. That's the host property with its secondary windows here, blank elevation on the property at that side, on the southern side. The garden you can see is at the back here with greenhouses and outbuildings. Application is recommended for refusal because of the flood risk issues. It's in flood zone 3. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one who's speaking as ward member, and he has 5 minutes to make his points. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman and member councillors. I just want to draw the attention. I hope you've seen this report that's on the web, which is given. It concludes that the sequential and exceptions tests are satisfied. Right, I'll go into my thing now. I'd like to thank Ms Gunnell for a well-balanced report, though I do not agree with the interpretation. The background to this is that it's a self-build by the applicant's son who wishes to care for his elderly mother. She's partially sighted following an aneurysm and has a back injury where she walks doubles up, so she's now finding it difficult to walk up the stairs to her home. He hopes to build a very modest bungalow in the garden next to his home so he can care for his mother. There are no objections from any agencies, neighbours are in support, the parish council is in support. This is an infill which will not affect any other property and provide substantial benefits to the community. Less than 100 yards away, the old Globe is being converted into 5 cottages on the same side of the road. The issue of the flood risk. This is a flood risk area 3. I can tell you that the local, on that Friday, that bad Friday, it took me 3 hours to drive from Boston to Goulsby. Merrimley Fen and Sawsett were underwater. I went through New Bolingbroke and there wasn't even a splash. The flood risk mitigation for this area was constructed 200 years ago and has been continually upgraded ever since. The Witham Forth IDB had sufficient pumping capacity to ensure that the whole of the West Fen area is free from flooding. We have a Hobole drain, West Fen drain and pumping stations at Laidbank and Hobole that move 27 tonnes of water a minute against the tide. We are looking at a very modest bungalow with a substantial benefit to the community in a medium-sized village. The sequential tests and I believe the exceptional tests have been met. Paragraph 7.8 of the officer's report confirms that a pragmatic approach on the availability of appropriate sites should be taken. The search parameters are not defined by the NPPF or the planning practice guide. This lady needs a ground floor accommodation next to her carer. It would be pointless trying to build a house in Sibsey or anywhere else. The EAA have no objections, subject to the floor level being raised by 0.3 metres, solid construction floor, raised sockets, and are registered with the EA flood warning system. These elements make the development safe for its lifetime and satisfy the requirements of the second part of the exceptional test. 7 years ago, permission was granted for the development of the bush sidings at New Bolingbroke because the ground levels were sufficiently high to take development out of the flood risk. The only reason the ground was high is because the Great North Railway raised them. This is what the applicant wants to do by 0.3 metres. It is reasonable that the sequential test is confined to New Bolingbroke. This is a medium-sized settlement within the current local plan and therefore regarded as suitable for SP4 for small development, infill of up to 2 dwellings. Neither the sustainability or New Bolingbroke or the specific requirements of the applicant be achieved through the building of a bungalow in Stickney or any other village. This is exactly the rationale of the Council's Executive Board in agreeing to make the Skegness Gateway Local Development Order and not apply a sequential test over a broader area. It is also clear that the property will be safe for its lifetime, a point relevant which the other agencies concur. Please support this application. The application is for a very modest bungalow in an infill position with no local objections, which will greatly enhance the life of the applicant, adds to the sustainability of New Bolingbroke, and the community benefits are substantial and outweigh the sequential and exceptional tests. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Does any member a question for Councillor Jones, please? Thank you, Councillor Kemp.
Thank you. What's the thinking behind a 3-bedroom house as opposed to, say, an annex, for example, given the need for this property? Thank you.
Well, if you look at the site, you know, an annex, you could put an annex on the back, but obviously this lady wants her own independence. She lives alone at the moment. She's incapable of going up the stairs and living with a visual impairment. And so she could be cared for by a son and daughter-in-law right next door. There are other sons in the house itself. And so it's the ideal situation would be the bungalow at the side. It's a very modest bungalow if you look at the details.
Thank you. Further question? No. Thanks. I'd like to invite Councillor Jones to depart next door where he can watch the television. Members, any questions for the officers? Councillor Cunnington, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, looking at it, we've got the flood risk element, but what really is the objection from the officer? Because you've got the flood risk, and apart from that, it is for somebody to be cared for by their relatives. We've done this time and time again. We've allowed houses, etc., under this care policy. I recall there is a policy that does allow that sort of care from a relative and a development to be built even in, say, open countryside. I'm just one, I can't recall the policy off the top of my head, but I know we've done it before.
I mean, Councillor Jones mentioned a relative, and it has been mentioned, but that, you know, was the occupation of the bungalow will be for a relative, but there's nothing to show that that would definitely be the case. It's not, you know, it wasn't, they didn't apply for a dwelling for a relative. There's no condition that they requested to be put on it for a relative. It's just really, it's just a market dwelling. It may well be occupied by the applicant's mother, you know, that may be the case, but that's not part of the actual application itself. The sequential test is normally, can be district-wide, or you are able to make it a smaller area, but it's very rarely that you would just do it to the specific village where the application is. The whole of New Bolingbroke is flood zone 3. And normally we expect applicants to do a wider search area. I mean, we've brought applications to committee before where they've done a wider search area.
Yeah. Can I ask then, Jane, can I have some guidance on that policy? I recall when we did at Borough, it was on Station Road, and it did have a certain policy where you as officers had to go away and do it. There was discussions with the applicant. There was a policy that did allow this sort of design, this sort of build. Can you recall what the policy is?
That's you're struggling with that, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm not aware of a policy specific to that type of situation. All I could, and it's not ringing a bell with me.
Can we have a chat outside then, Andy, quickly? Can we just I would like to make a proposal, but I just need a bit of guidance on this. If I can have 2 minutes.
I think he's on about single plot exception.
So the only suggestion I can think of, I am aware, and it's probably several years ago when we had applications of this extent, but there was I think a case presented for affordable housing, and that was considered as appropriate, you know, because there was an identified specific need that had to be addressed, and I think that was a component of a more sizable development of, I forget the number, maybe 5, 6 dwellings, something like that.
No, it's more, Councillor McNally's trying to help out, I think. It was definitely one dwelling for a relative. I know the application, I know the application site. I could give you the application address. And you even had to go away as officers, and there was other things you had to look at, and that was the key thing that made this committee pass that one application. And this application looks very, very similar. If we can draw this policy, I'm quite happy that we should be approving on these policy grounds. And it was, I can give you the site that I'm on about, so you can try and help. I mean, it was Station Road Borough.
Yeah.
Can Mitch, you have a chat to give you the app, see if you can pull it up?
Can we just hold things a moment? Let's have another question. Question from Councillor Alex Hall.
Can't remember now. Sorry, sorry, I've been waiting so long. I do apologize. No. So I mean, right. The one reason for refusal is the application site is in flood risk zone 3, and that is the only reason for refusal. I mean, Councillor Jones has, in his comments, said what they were willing to do in terms of raising the level of the ground floor, etc. Is that not enough to approve it? I mean, because it feels so frustrating that there is only one reason for this refusal, and it's this situation of it being in flood risk zone 3. I mean, let's face it, but you know, it's pretty much infill. You know, there's a lot of properties in the village. You know, it just seems nonsensical to me that we can't approve this application.
Okay, and we got a response. Hang on, response, please.
Councillor's absolutely right. There is only one reason for refusal that's being proposed, and it's entirely a flood risk concern. The requirement to undertake sequential and exceptions tests is embodied both in our policy and the local plan at the national level, and it's absolutely aimed at simply trying to make sure that you put developments in areas that at least risk of flooding as a preference and a priority, other than when you absolutely don't need to, when you know the circumstances justify otherwise. I'm not sure, and our view is that sequential exception test hasn't been undertaken robustly enough, or the area of search has not been properly explored, and therefore, you know, we have a situation whereby it doesn't pass the sequential test, it doesn't consequently pass the exceptions test, because it's not offering that wider community benefit, and therefore the final element of the exception test, i.e. can the development made resilient? Yes, that aspect could probably be addressed, and I think the report acknowledges that, but it's the first two essential parts of the sequential and exceptions test that it's difficult to argue have been addressed.
Councillor Yarsley, please, and then Councillor David Hall.
I was a little confused about point 2.5, and it says site lies in flood zone 3A, and then it carries on to say has a 1% chance of flood occurring in any given year. To me, that's negligible, isn't it? I understand that is that not the case? 1%? It also says 1 in 100 years flood extent.
Flood zone 3 is a high risk of flooding. That constitutes a high risk of flooding in this location.
Councillor Hall, David.
Okay. Councillor Jones did bring up that just up the road that there was an additional 5 houses infill being built, and the MPPF and the local plan state that this village is only eligible for 2 infill. So surely this has actually gone over its infill rate already.
So I think brief comment on the one that's referred to with the greater number. That was effectively a regeneration scenario, so the policy position wasn't quite the same. It was partly brownfield site that required regeneration, not Class Q. No.
Okay, Councillor Mrs Yardley. I finished. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, if a separate building and annex was to be included here, same, not a separate residence, would that be looked at differently? Could that possibly permitted development, or would the flood risk not be so much? I'm just thinking, you know, if the genuine concern of the applicant is to have a place to live of independence for their relatives, would that possibly be a different outcome to this one?
The simple answer on that is yes.
Right, thank you.
The idea of an annex, a genuine granny type annex that are referred to.
Councillor Edgington.
Thank you. It seems to me that this hinges on 2 things. First of all, the flood risk element, and as Councillor Alex Hall has said, the applicant has said that in this modest development it would be raised in order to deal with that issue. And secondly, with the sequential test, which the report says that it's not been addressed. If you look at it from a different point of view, this gentleman, the applicant, wants to build a modest property within the curtilage of the existing site in order so that his elderly mother can be close to hand so he can look after her. First of all, I don't think that he would want to do that if he felt that he would place his mother in an area of a high risk category. That would be totally wrong. And secondly, if it is said that he can build that property elsewhere and not on the preferred site, sort of negates the whole argument that the applicant's putting forward insofar as he wants to have his mother close to hand so he can attend to her needs. If the argument is, well, if there's a site at the other end of the village or somewhere, then you can build there. That rather destroys the whole purpose of the applicant's rationale in the first place, doesn't it?
Thank you. Councillor Alex Hall.
Thank you. I mean, I would like to propose approval of this application. Thank you.
Just bear in mind, please, that whoever does what you've just done has got to come up with some planning reasons for their proposal. Thank you. Councillor Marnock.
Just a couple of comments. I think people must live in mansions because everybody keeps saying this 3-bedroom bungalow is a modest dwelling, and I don't call a 3-bedroom bungalow a modest dwelling, especially if it's for an elderly lady who's visually impaired. And the other thing to remember is that in the planning application phase stage, at no point have they said it's for their relative. That's all.
Thank you. And if Councillor Cunnington, do you want to go back to your original?
Yeah, I just need some help. I know there was a policy. I know there was an application. I just need some help from the officers to be able to give me something to approve. You're asking us to give proof of why we're going against the officer. I've got an application in mind that had a policy there. It had information to go with it. I just don't see myself, as we all know, to put these policies out. I can give you the
just Mr. Booth's going to have a stab at trying to track the application down. So have we any further questions, Councillor Yardley?
Just a comment, really. I agree with the fact it's not a modest development. Would it work if they basically said on their application that it was for their parent, for their mother to live in? Would that help?
Tied conditionally to the
tied conditionally. Would that make a little bit of a difference? And of course, they lift the height of the site so it's not flood risk. We all know, eventually, the property will be empty. And I understand that the reason that it's a 3-bedroom is eventually it will be sold to somebody else or some other family member will live or whatever the other reasons is. But we're looking at this application. I've made the chair very happy by saying that.
It's very impressive. That is my word. Yeah. So find the lady by condition. Any further questions? Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, just for clarification, if the applicant had made the main point of wanting to build at the point of application, would the consideration of the officers been any different? Would it have taken that into consideration?
Can somebody else do that who isn't Andy?
Well, it just raised the question of whether actually that constitutes an annex, because it's totally independent. It's got its own garden, its own access. It's got 3 bedrooms. It's got kitchen, living. Normally, an annex, you would expect there to be a lot of tie between the two, you know, so you couldn't live in it independently. You know, effectively, it is a bungalow in its own curtilage, which happens to be next to, you know, the applicant's sort of bungalow. So it'd be akin to, if it wasn't approved, it'd be akin, and the mother did live there, it'd be akin to 2 family members living next door, which you could get in any place. You know, you could buy a property next door to any of your relatives, can't you? You know, so it would be akin to that. It wouldn't be an annex. I don't think you could class that a 3-bedroomed bungalow with all amenities, own garden area, own drive. I don't think you could truly class that as an annex. Yeah.
Councillor David Hall.
With what Michelle's just said, I would recommend a refusal of the site. It isn't an annex, it is a separate building, and we have to look at it as the application came in as a separate building. And as a separate building, it is an infill in the site that shouldn't have one.
Really cool.
On that recommendation, on the recommendation of the officers, I would put forward a refusal.
Yeah. Have we a seconder? Thank you. Yeah, happy. Have we a further speaker? Anybody else want to bat? We're Mr. Booth's on your case, so we'll. No. All right. Does that help if you know the applicant's name?
It might help. Yeah. We'll just probably don't.
Bob Holmes. Yes, I remember that myself. Yeah.
We passed it. Sorry, Chair, this is the annoying thing. Obviously, due to my vision, my memory is really good. We passed one. His daughter wanted to build a bungalow in the back garden to look after him because he was taken very ill, and we passed it. It is in theory.
Yeah, we'll come up with an answer as soon as we can find it. Any further questions or observations?
Yeah, if not, Chair, I'm going to have to support Councillor Hall on the refusal, but if we can find that, happy to approve.
Yeah. Currently, I haven't got a seconder for approval. I think it might be interesting to.
Can we have some clarification of how many proposals we have in front of us?
We have one at the moment.
Which is?
Proposed and seconded for refusal. We have a proposal for approval from Councillor Alex Hall, but no seconder.
I will second Councillor Alex Hall.
Thank you. If somebody wants to start thinking good and hard.
I think I might have found it.
Hang on, we might have joy.
Just check, Councillor, would it be Bridge House? Would that have been the address? I've found, we've managed to track down an application. This was made with one. It did go to committee. So it was a committee decision, but it was a single plot exceptions policy proposal. So we do have a policy. You're absolutely right. That is, it is focused more on delivering affordable housing or helping to deliver on affordable housing rather than any other set of circumstance. But it was a single plot exceptions policy scheme. If this is the right one, that was 2021. decision.
That's about right.
Yep. Yep, but it was,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, but that was considered, circumstances were different to say, it was considered as an exception, a single plot exceptions policy, which we do have a particular policy for, but that's very much focused on delivering and satisfying an identified need in a different way to the traditional need and through a, affordable housing provider.
Does that then not count for this? Because obviously there's a need for the relatives to be with the mother. So there is a need for the property to be in that location. I know how hard it is myself to be VI, and for the need to be them to be able to look after her day-to-day living, shopping, etc. The need is there and it is relevant. So can we not, on that grounds, with the condition that it is for the mother until the end of her life, that would suffice me to approve?
First observation simply be that single plot exceptions policy, which is SP9 in the local plan, is very much focused on affordable housing and requires a justification in terms of the applicant not being able to acquire a property because of affordable circumstances. So the policy wouldn't apply to this particular circumstance at all. I mean, clearly, what I'm hearing from members is a sympathy and a desire to see whether there's a way of trying to support it. It is a tricky one though, because clearly the flood risk position is a strong one. It's a heightened area of flood risk, and the question is the justification to go from that is not there. To depart from that position does not appear to be there. The only thing that I can, based on what I'm sort of hearing, I can probably suggest is that acknowledging what's been identified as a need, although I'd stress that the application wasn't presented to us in those terms, would be that on that basis, then clearly if that was given, if members wanted to give that weight, then that is possible. It's not normally the approach that we would take. But on that basis, then clearly in satisfying that need, there's only a limited geographic area when you might be able to do that. So that might effectively shrink the sequential area of search to a lesser degree than we would normally look at. But it, that's all that's really what I'm hearing from members. But it is a very exceptional set of circumstances, I think.
I think Mr. Norman would just like a quick word.
Yeah, just interested to listen and hear the debate that's gone back and forth. I've had similar cases, it won't surprise you to hear, at South Holland and other places. I think the issue you've got here is Andy's outlined it. There is the flood risk issue. It is causing you a problem here in going the other way. It is that kind of classic heart versus head decision, isn't it? You do see them, they do come along. But as officers and members of the committee, we've got to take that policy-based decision, would be my advice. I think the key here is it has, a case has been put, but actually the application, as has been said by Michelle and Andy, is simply for a bungalow. It is simply for a bungalow. If this was an annex, I think you're in a very different position. But that is not what is in front of you, is all I would say as a piece of advice.
I think my observation would be that there's a good lot of goodwill for this application in principle, but from what little bit I can see and where we started this debate is, had it been presented in the form of an annex, it would have been dealt with quite some time ago. But we are currently, we've got proposed and seconded for a refusal and approval, but for approval we need some reasons.
Well, can I just come in there, Steve?
You may, because you're the proposer.
Thank you. Well, I mean, to be quite honest, as I said before, that the only reason is that it's in flood risk zone 3. Flooding has not been a regular occurrence in our Bolingbroke. It's not been a major issue in the past, and it's already been mitigated. The applicant has already said that they'll mitigate against it by having the raised floor level. I mean, I don't know what more they would have to do to get this approved. I mean, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that this is up for refusal. So I please implore you, committee, to support my proposal to approve this application. Thank you.
Yeah, councillor Yarsley.
I see, I take your point about, you know, it needs to be a policy decision. I take that point, but again, it is a heart versus head decision. And exactly as Councillor Hall said, if we were to raise the level, we've done this in other places that are flood risk as well. If we were to raise the level, what is this not something we could do? Is this not something that we could then say, well, the policy will be satisfied? We've increased the, you know, the height of this dwelling, made sure that nobody else gets flooded with, you know, rainwater, etc., and everybody around is safe. Would that not sort of push the envelope?
As part of the proposal, it's already proposed to raise it up by 300 mil, which is the standard sort of thing you get in areas of flood risk. So that's already part of the proposal before you today anyway.
So why is that not enough then?
Because that just, so there's the sequential test, that's the thing you do first. If you fail that, that's the end of the matter. If you pass that, so you think sequentially it's the only place it can go, it has to go there. You then move on to the exception test, and that's got two parts. So the first part is you have to prove sort of like a national need, if you like, for the proposal. And then the second part of it is that actually it's going to be safe. So the second part of the exception test is the bit where you get your 300, your raising bit, you get your electrics up a certain height and certain ways of building. So there's all those sort of technical things, you know, that you can do to make it safe, but that doesn't get you past the exceptions test because you've still got the first part, which is to show the overall, you know, the benefits of it, public benefits of it being there. But you only do the exception test if you pass the sequential test. So it's not a case of you do the whole lot and see where you get. You do the sequential, you pass it, you can then move on to the exception test, 2 parts. If you fail the sequential test, then you shouldn't then move on to the exception test.
It fails at the first hurdle, basically.
So if we said, I'm being cheeky here, but if we said the new dwelling that's been proposed someplace else, the multiple houses, which they're not really allowed to have more than the 2 houses, and we said we'll give this one, you know, the other additional development that Councillor Jones mentioned, which has 5 houses coming up.
Yeah,
which they're not allowed to have.
Brownfield site.
Yeah, that was a
brownfield
brownfield site, so that's different policy situation.
I'll just shut up then.
I think, ladies and gentlemen, we've bashed this about. There's an overwhelming sympathy for the applicant and a desire that his mother or their mother should be able to be on site. But I really think that this has probably not been quite thought out as it might. I think Councillor Kemp's very first observation, in my view, would carry the day, i.e. were it an annex, it would have been approved ages ago. But we're against a brick wall of our policies, both East Lindsey's and national ones. And normally the associated group who are here get me out the cart by giving us a bit of latitude and some reasons why we might be able to prove it. But in all conscience, they can't, from what I can see. So I think you've got to bear that in mind. I mean, the ideal thing to me would be if the applicant submitted a different application, but that's nothing. That's not what we're dealing with here today. So I've got a proposal for approval. I'll do that first, and I'll just ask Councillor Alex. Oh, is it refusal first? That's Carey. Yes, right. Refusal first. Does anybody need clarification about what that is? It's subject to the, you know, officer's report. All those in favour of refusal? Nine. All those against? Thanks. Yep. All those in favour of approval? Those against? I'm afraid that's refused, but I do hope the applicants, I mean, we've thrashed it nearly to death for you. If you could only, not my business, but if you could go home and get your pencil sharpened and come up with an annex or another arrangement, I think you can see what the feeling of the meeting is and what we would really like to do. But anyway, thank you all very much. Right, is that, yeah, have you noted all the appeals and jiggerment in the back?
Yeah.
Delegated decisions, date of the next meeting, 1st of, I don't know if any of you won't be grouse shooting, any of you, will you? No, it's a bit early for that, but anyway. Right.
Glorious fault.
It isn't, no. Someone might need a bit of help getting in the gear, I don't know, but anyway. Okay, thank you all very much indeed for your perseverance and well done. Thank you.
Thank you.